Worried about work, family, or other relationships? I'm Chuck Wolf, a pioneer in emotional intelligence. When live on the Emotion Roadmap, I use a proven 4-question framework to turn emotional roadblocks into clear next steps on air in real time. Join us Tuesdays at 5 p.m., twice a month on YouTube. Subscribe, go to YouTube, type in @CJWOLFE5, and ask to be notified when I'm live so you don't miss a show. Call in when you see the number on screen. In 1990, the psychologists who sparked the science of emotions asked me to help translate their research into everyday tools. I built the Emotion Roadmap, a simple 4-question model that helps anyone improve how they manage their feelings and influence others ethically and effectively. On the Emotion Roadmap, take the wheel and control how you feel. We turn worry into clarity and stress into strategy. Each 45-minute episode blends practical psychology, common sense tools, guest experts, and live caller coaching. Smart, capable people often get stuck when emotions run high, and this show helps you get unstuck fast. When you call, you help everyone else who listens. As I help you, I explain how the Emotion Roadmap works so that everyone listening is learning to use the process. To learn more about me, go to www.emotionroadmap.com. I have been very lucky in life and have worked with and learned from some of the greatest thinkers in the world at Harvard and Yale, other places, and I want to bring what I have learned to hopefully make a meaningful, positive difference in your lives. Enjoy and tell your friends and your family. Hi, this is Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Live streaming today, and if you want to talk to me, you can see there's numbers above me that on the screen that you can call, and you can call in with a challenge that you might be facing right now that is something that is complicating your life, causing you to deal with some uncertainty perhaps, some self-doubt. You may be worried about a conversation that you're about to have that might be one that you worry might escalate instead of get better. You might have a conversation that you're just really uncertain about how to have. It might be about a decision you have to make that's going to impact people in a way that you know they're not going to be happy about. There's all kinds of challenges in life, one of which is how you're feeling. How you're feeling physically, how you're feeling mentally, how you're feeling emotionally. And when you're not feeling quite right, when something's not quite right emotionally or physically or mentally, it's hard to be on top of your game. It's hard to be the best possible version of you. My show's about helping people to deal with challenges in life where strong emotions are present and impacting your ability to make a decision, impacting your ability to problem solve or to do your generally good critical thinking. So if you've got something on your mind, again, the show's called The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. You can give me a call. And if you were listening last week, you know that Tricia called in and we had a lovely chat about time management. Tricia, if you're listening again, I hope that what we talked about worked for you, and you might let me know how the week went if you were able to track emotionally how you felt several times a day. But she was dealing with a real issue that was fairly common, normal, but at times we just get overwhelmed with all the things that we've got going on in our lives, in our busy lives. Trish was a graduate student. She had a full-time job, just bought a new home. It's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And so she was calling up for some help with that. And again, part of that is to do with your critical thinking, of course. And the obvious choice is to make a schedule and stick to it. But the reason we make schedules and don't stick to them has to do with our complicated emotional lives that we all live and that we don't necessarily talk about, but we all experience. And so I helped her with that. So anybody that's out there where you might be in your home or at your business, in your workplace, wherever you are that you're listening, and you've got something going on for you that you're not certain how to deal with, whether it's at work or at home or in your community, anywhere really, and you want to talk to me about that, you can call the numbers that you see above on the screen. The way it works is you call the phone number, and after the phone number, you see there's a PIN. It'll ask you for the PIN, and you type in the PIN, and then the pound sign. And then you're going to be talking to me. It's that simple. And you can tell me, you can call me Chuck, and I'll ask you for a name, and you don't have to give me your real name. Just give me a name so I can just address you appropriately. So whether you're Mary, Mike, Mohammed, Joe, Alessandra, whoever you might be, whatever name you might want to use, whoever you want to be today, you can call in and share what's going on for you. A brief summary of what you're experiencing, and whether it's just something internal you're trying to deal with. Sometimes our biggest challenges aren't with somebody else. They have to do with what's going on inside each of us, where we're dealing with some internal strife, where we're trying to make a decision about something. We're just trying to feel better about life, perhaps. I know one of the things that I do want to talk about today is I do want to talk about the idea of how do you deal with not being well? How do you deal with sickness, whether acute or ongoing? You know, some people have these diseases that are called progressive diseases, which don't really get better. Some people right now, if you might be listening, and you might be in hospice care and trying to deal with the whole concept of end of life and what that means. Other people might be just struggling with a disease or temporary impairment, something that might have happened in a pickleball court or just anywhere. You might have fallen or slipped or lost your balance, or you may be getting some test results and that were disturbing, that you found out something isn't quite right with you medically. There's so many things about our health that impact us emotionally. And so I did want to talk a bit about that. But first, I want to, again, see if there's somebody out there that has something specific that they'd like to talk about. If it's work-related or family-related or community-related, I'm happy to engage in that. It's real joy when I'm able to be helpful to someone. It really makes me feel very good about dealing with someone else's troubles, where I can use the emotion roadmap I created to demonstrate how the roadmap can help people, you as an individual, if you call in, hopefully help you to have a more meaningful, positive outcome than you might experience just on your own. What I have found is when I help people who are struggling with almost any situation, focus on the emotions that they are feeling and the emotions that others who might be very key to what they're trying to get done, what those others might be feeling. And if we decide in talking together that those feelings that you're having and the people that are close to you or connected with you are not having the feelings that you'd like them to have, we start thinking about what would be a better feeling, what would be more ideal, what would be helpful if you wanted to move, for instance, from feeling anxious to feeling calm, perhaps even confident. How could you do that if that's what you needed to do? And so we start to explore ways in which I can help you find ways that work for you. Anybody can Google, how do I get from anxious to confident? And although many people aren't using Google these days, many more people are using artificial intelligence to get those kind of questions answered. And you'll get some decent answers, and some perhaps good ones. And maybe you'll use one or two of them. But what usually comes up, in my experience, with either Google search or Microsoft's Bing or Yahoo search or whatever search you might have been using in the past, or whether now you're using Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot, whichever bot you might be using, you're going to hear the things that are available to everybody. But what I try to help people with is to find out what's going to work for you. And that's not quite so simple. You can't just ask an AI bot, what's going to work for me? That's where the art comes in. And so, again, I love helping people. I love helping people make a positive, meaningful difference in their lives. But more importantly, the reason I do it live streaming like this, and not just, with my family and friends, which I try to help them as well, but also in the work that I do. But right now, I'm volunteering my time because I believe if I can help you find a better way to deal with some of the challenges you're facing in the immediate future, and describe to you the way I'm doing it by asking you, how are you feeling? What do you think might be better to feel, more ideal to feel? How can we get you from what you're feeling to what's more ideal? And then considering, what are you really able and willing to do? Do we have a strategy at some point where you can say, I'm pretty sure I'm able to do this, Chuck. And you know what? I'm actually excited about doing it. I'm really excited about doing this. I think this is really going to work. And I can't, as soon as I hang up the phone with you or as soon as I stop talking with you, I'm going to try this. I'm going to figure out how to get this done. Now you've got what I would call an emotion-based plan. Something that's really going to be helpful to you, at least got a good chance to be helpful to you. Because like all plans, we might have great plans, but they don't always go the way we hope. But then you modify them by asking the same questions. If it didn't create the feeling you want, what did it create? And what are you feeling now? And how do you get from where you are to where you want to be? Maybe it moved you a few steps gradation-wise up towards where you want to get to, but it didn't take you all the way. What other help do you need? So the concept is quite simple to talk about. It's actually quite profound to do. If you can find yourself throughout the day asking yourself, how are you feeling? How do you want to feel? What would make you feel better? Now, personally, I have my own experience. I've had some interesting experiences in the last few days, the last few weeks, really, and some of which have been painful to me, physically painful. And it's been a problem that I find myself being irritable, particularly at home, and I don't mean to be. And I have a lovely wife, and if you're listening, I apologize for any of the irritability that I'm showing, because when you're not feeling well, when you're physically challenged and every little move that you make causes some irritation, it's really hard to be the best version of yourself. It's often the case for me. I try, but sometimes I just really struggle with trying to, when I'm physically hurting, to be pleasant and nice and supportive and empathetic and caring, and the things that I like to be normally when I'm feeling healthier. In any case, all of you have had the experience of feeling irritated by something physical. Some of you may manage that much better than I am, for instance, or you may struggle with it like I am right now. But my point to you is that when we feel this and we're aware that we're doing this, be as upfront as you can that I can't be supportive right at this minute. I want to be. I'm not feeling it right now. But then try to push through it when you can be. Any glimmer of hope where you're feeling a little bit better, share that with the people you love that are around you, or with the people at work if you happen to be going to work and experiencing some of this pain and discomfort. So my point on dealing with physical illness is that illness is a great place to think about how does the emotion roadmap work. Now, I want to tell you a few interesting things that happened recently. This isn't about me. This is about I use LinkedIn a fair amount. I like LinkedIn. It's a nice place to connect with other people in business. And it's really, I really enjoy reading what other people post, as well as I like to post myself about different interesting ideas, innovations, creative ideas, and insights that I'd like to share or comment about other people's work where they've shared things that I really find intriguing. And one of the things that I saw on LinkedIn was someone that I've worked with a number of years ago now, probably 15 or so. She was talking about dealing with a surgeon. She had a problem with her foot, and she had gone to see a highly recommended surgeon, someone that was supposed to be very, very excellent at dealing with problems with your feet. And she's a very engaging and warm person. She has a designation in business called the Trust Architect. Lee has spent an enormous amount of time helping people learn how to generate trust, create more trust in themselves and others, in teams and cultures. And she's really good at it. And occasionally we teamed up and I used my emotion roadmap with the work that I did with her. But what she wrote, and this is just random for me. I just happened to see that she posted, so I clicked on to see what she posted. And she posted an item that it said something like this. It said, I went to see a surgeon the other day, highly recommended, very competent, and I needed some help with the foot where I was having some significant problems. And in my usual manner, I greeted the surgeon. I was warm and asked him a little bit about himself, and he didn't want to talk to me. He was very clear he didn't want to engage with me. He kept discounting what I was saying and asking me about my foot. He seemed to love my foot, but he didn't seem to love me. She wrote something along those lines. And I was disappointed. And normally she said, I like someone with at least a little bedside manner. Whoever's going to be taking care of me, I like to have some kind of comfort that this person might care a bit about me as a person. And then she said, I got to the place where, and this is what was so interesting to me. She said, I used Chuck Wolf's roadmap. Now, she'd learned that from me and with me a long time ago. And she said, I understood that this surgeon was concerned with my foot. That was why I was there to see him. I asked myself, how do I want to feel? And I changed the feelings I was having. I wanted to feel engaged. I wanted to feel cared about. I wanted to feel supported. And I couldn't do that with this person. So what I wanted to feel instead was confident that he was going to be the right person to help me with the problem I have with my foot. And he was clearly caring and supportive and empathetic with my foot. So in a sense, she changed how she felt, though. Instead of being angry with him for not being responsive and listening to her and warming up to her, if you will, what she said instead was this, I just can't, I can't keep going down this road. It's only going to make me continue to make me even unhappier than I already am. So how do I change what I'm feeling to what I want to feel right now? And that's the roadmap. And she used it in that setting. So I wrote to her. She didn't know I was going to say this, but I wrote. I said, Lee, I'm so glad that you used that. She said, and I want to share this with all of you because this is a helpful way to think about this concept of how do you want people to feel and why it's so important. So one time, almost all the time, but one particular time, I remember I had passed out from dehydration, and I landed up in an ambulance, and I was awake because they gave me intravenous and fluids, and so I was awake, but I didn't know if anything serious had happened. I just knew that I'd passed out, and I didn't know it was just from dehydration. I didn't know if there's something more wrong with me, but I'd been out working in my garden, and I'd just been outside for like 4 or 5 hours, in the hot sun, and didn't really drink very much water. I didn't really think about it. I was anxiously getting ready to go to a field event, some concert. And at the concert, I passed out, unfortunately. And I'm in the ambulance and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I know that these people who work in an ambulance are people who basically are people who want to help other people. I mean, that's why you do that job typically. But I'm just another person to them, just another person that happens to be in their vehicle at this time. And I'm just a number, really. So I thought to myself, how do I want them to feel about me? And how do I want to feel about being here with them? And I started to engage them, and I started to just ask. And by the time we reached the hospital we were going to, they were laughing and supporting. Anyway, my point to you is that it isn't just in a very emergency situation, but anytime I'm with a doctor in any circumstance, I do engage and try to find out a little bit about them. Now, not all doctors want to take the time, and everybody's under a lot of time pressure in most circumstances in the medical field these days. But every once in a while, it's not infrequent really, somebody feels like, hey, here's a person, a patient, who's asking about me. All day long, I'm asking about all these people walking through the door, and nobody asks about me. And here's a guy who's sitting in front of me who says, hey, who are you and what do you care about? And what's important to you in your life? And I don't ask like really profound questions at first. It's just a little bit to get engaged, start a conversation, and then find out a little bit about who is this person that's in front of me. Now, I don't do this to manipulate the situation, to make people feel like, hey, I want to take care of this guy because he seems to be a good guy and he wants to care about me. I mean, that's part of it. Honestly, that's part of it. But I just am curious about people. I really like learning about people. That's always been true about me ever since I've been a little kid. And so this for me is a strength that I learned how to maximize, and I've tried over the years to teach others. Because when you do engage with others, I mean, certainly there are people out there that will take advantage of anybody anytime, but they're mostly good people who, when they feel like the person that they're providing a service for or selling a product to, if they feel like you're someone that they want to care about because you actually seem to care about them in ways most people don't. If you find somebody does that for you, don't you feel like you want to know a little bit more about them or do a little bit better for them than you might otherwise? Now, certainly everybody comes in with a set of standards and people try to do good work. A lot of people come in with pretty good standards and they try to do good work all the time. But you get that little extra sometimes when the person that you're delivering some service or product to makes you feel like you matter, you're important. You're not just a vehicle that got them something that they needed and you don't think about them a second longer than that. So my point is, after seeing Lee's article, I thought about this a bunch. And one of my best friends, and actually is a first cousin to my wife, is fighting with different forms of cancer. 2 forms of cancer showed up in his life several years ago. He wasn't really supposed to make it, but he's a fighter. He grew up in Brooklyn, and he's a very feisty guy, very funny guy, and a very loving guy, and a really great friend. And he had been working with me really, really closely for a number of years in the field of emotional intelligence in schools. He was actually an award-winning principal in several different New York school systems over the years. In fact, for those of you who know anything about the field of emotional intelligence, there is something called the Center for Emotional Intelligence at Yale University. And there's a conference coming up called the International Congress for Emotional Intelligence. It's got 2 names, International Congress or International Society of Emotional Intelligence. It's made up of people all over the world, and they're having a conference at Yale coming up at the end of this month. You can look it up. And I'm actually an advisor to them. I'm on their board of advisors, but they're doing it with many of the people from something called the Center for Emotional Intelligence at Yale. And that center is run by a friend of mine called Mark Brackett. And Mark and one of my best friends, Bruce, Barbara's first cousin, Bruce Alster. Mark and Bruce Alster and I all began working in schools together. Before the Center for Emotional Intelligence existed at Yale, the work that Mark was doing began with Bruce and I in New York City. Well, not in the city itself, but in New York, at a school called Valley Stream. And I was doing work with Mark and with Bruce. It was really exciting work. And then Mark went on. He actually has had a great career with emotional intelligence. And I'm just telling you about the conference in case anybody has an interest in going and listening to some excellent speakers. Coming up, I think, July 28th to the 30th, something like that. And also, I just want to mention at the same time that I started to talk with you about Bruce, because Bruce got these 2 forms of cancer. Now, he'd been doing all this work with me, and I'd worked with him very closely over a number of years in schools. And one of the things that he did was he took this emotion roadmap to heart in helping him battle cancer. Someday I'm going to have him on just to talk a little bit about his battles. And he really felt like he was going to kick cancer's behind. He talks about it a little more graphically than that. But he's survived, and he's done well. And part of that he attributes to the down times, the hard times, the times when he wasn't sure he was going to make it, about how the emotion roadmap was a critical tool for him elevating his ability to deal with the fact that cancer, this particular form of cancer, doesn't really go away. But if you fight long and hard and you do the right things, you can learn to live. Sorry, I forgot to shut this off, apparently. Let me see if I can shut this off. So my point in saying all that is that there's a place in your life for the emotion roadmap if you're dealing with any form of illness, or even if you're just meeting medical people who are asked to be somehow supportive of whatever's going on in your life with your body at this point in time, or any point in time, really. Or this whole other aspect, what about if it's your partner that's sick? What if it's your child that's sick? What if it's your parent that's sick? Your sister, brother, friend, someone you're really, really close to. And that's some other work I'm trying to do these days, which is around caretaking and caregiving. So I've been working with a woman at the Yale University who's a specialist in dementia. And her name is Joan Monum. And if you or your family members are dealing with dementia, she has got a book, a guidebook that she's created on helping people deal with dementia with the resources that are available in the state of Connecticut. And she's compiled a really excellent book. In fact, I was on a call with her and a neurologist the other day, And he said to her, he said, Joan, your guidebook has made it out of Connecticut. And she said, really? She said, yes, I have doctors who are asking me for it in Florida, friends of mine that have heard about it. And they said they'd love to have that kind of field book, a field guide to what are the resources for dealing with dementia. Well, Joan and I have made a connection, and I mentioned this before on other shows, but we were hoping to get a grant, but the grant didn't come through. But we are looking to pilot an activity to see if the emotion roadmap can prove qualitatively and quantitatively that it helps people deal with caretaking for partners who have diseases, progressive diseases like dementia or so many others. And so we're in the process of, we're actually starting to talk now to businesses or industries that might want to have some role in funding this work. We're not looking to, this is not a moneymaker for either one of us. I mean, if we make some money, that'd be great, but it's really about the legacy for me and for Joan that we want to leave behind, which is if we find tools to help people to live better lives, and it helps them in such emotionally challenging circumstances, like when you're caretaking for a loved one. And by the way, I think the emotion roadmap is really critical for the caretaker. But then think about the poor person who's got the disease, who's losing their independence, his or her independence, who is suffering and can't do what she wants to do or he wants to do to help out and be part of a team effort to get done whatever needs to get done for the family or the couple or the partnership, whatever it is that the person's a part of, and they can't do their share anymore. And they're losing their ability sometimes to speak, sometimes to remember. And they know they're creating a tremendous amount of dependency on people they loved and care about, and they feel terrible about that. How emotionally challenging is that? So, I mean, the way I look at the emotional roadmap, it's for caregiving and for the patients being cared for. And when you pick somebody else, because sometimes people have enough resources they can hire people, how do you screen for the right people? How do you find the right people? Partly the guide in Joan's book is the places, resources for things like that. But then when you have somebody, that you are that's doing some caregiving, that's helping out, that shows up maybe 12 hours a day, for 3 days a week or more than that, or somebody lives in it perhaps even, and you're trying to understand, I don't like everything they do, but mom sure likes them, or dad sure likes them, or Janie sure likes them, or Muhammad likes them, or Jesus likes them. How to deal with the feelings you have when you see certain things not being done the way you think they should be, without jeopardizing the relationship, because it's hard to find good people in these roles. Well, that's part of the emotion roadmap too. It's like, if I get something critical that I want to tell you about, I want to give you some feedback of some kind, any kind, whether it has to do with caregiving or work related or something to do with a partnership or a spouse, a partner, or a child. Anytime you want to get feedback, it's always helpful to think about, before I say what I'm going to say, what I'm about to say is going to make this person feel how? Is it going to create the feeling I want? And if it's not, how can I say it in a way that the person feels supported, cared about, recognized, valued, appreciated, proud even? How do I create those pleasant feelings as opposed to how almost everybody feels when they're getting some kind of feedback that says, you could have done that better. At least the way I think about it, this would be a better way to do that. Because if you do it wrong, and you get that wrong more than once, or even once with some people these days, if you get it wrong, the person says, I'm out of here. I don't have to deal with this. I thought I was doing a good job. And they probably were. And it might not be perfect, but it never is. It's never perfect. So as I point out to you, the things that I think are tough in life, hardest in life, challenging in life, all contain strong emotions. And if you focus on the emotions in play and you ask yourself, if what I'm feeling might be useful to know why I'm feeling it, it's always useful to understand what your feelings are trying to alert you to or inform you about. Whatever's going on there, it's always helpful to know that, why you're feeling a certain way. But at the same time, those feelings might not be helpful. So my point to you in saying all that is that there are times when you want to feel like there's something going on where you feel that you're in control of the feelings that are in play. If you're not in control, that you have a process and a template that'll help you get you there. So I've been talking about a few different areas where I think it might be helpful to you to deal with some of these things in life by thinking about, how am I feeling? If it's not how I want to feel, what would be better to feel, even ideal to feel, for me and for anybody else that might be connected to it? And then, how do I get from what I'm feeling to what I'd like to feel, what I think would be better or more ideal to feel? How do I do that? That's the whole concept behind a roadmap. How do you get from where you are to where you want to go to? So having said that, I've talked a lot, but I also wanted to share with you a lot of things that are happening around illness and caregiving and your own emotional response to pain, and how others might understand and be more understanding of when you're in pain, not to expect the same best version of you hopefully you're delivering when you're not in pain, and how to be the best you can be even under the circumstances where you're feeling some pain or you have a disease that's going on forever and isn't ever going away. Those are things that are not necessarily easy for anybody to do, but I view the emotion roadmap almost like a power tool that help you get things done emotionally that you might do on your own at some point in some way through a lot of trial and error. But this template is perfect in so many ways for whatever situation you're facing that has strong emotions in it, for yourself and for others. So let me ask you again, if you've got something that's going on in your life, I'd love to take a phone call from somebody who might be in one of those situations where you're dealing with certain things that are causing you some concern, perhaps some pain, perhaps you're doing some caregiving, anything like that. If anything in your life is happening along those lines, I'd like to demonstrate for you, to help you personally, but also for anybody else that's out there, to see how this roadmap can actually be helpful. So let me give you the number. I know you can see it, but I'll read it one time. Again, if you got something that you think you want to call about, it doesn't have to be caregiving. It can be something work related, something in the home, anything really, or something in your community where you're struggling for whatever reasons with a team, with a teammate, with a leader, with a follower, with somebody who works for you, with a neighbor, anything. The number to call is 475-222-5438. One more time. Again, don't wait. You got about 15 more minutes. The number to call is 475-222-5438. And the PIN is 114053-876 and the pound sign. So if you'd like to chat with me and you don't mind sharing what's going on for you, I'll ask you just to tell me a little bit about what's happening. What's going on for you? Is there anybody else that's key to it, or is it just something that you're struggling with internally? And then I'll ask you about how are you feeling? How do you think you'd want to feel? And then let's see if we can find a way to get you to where you want to be in terms of the emotions you're experiencing. And then let's talk about the kind of things that would help you to get there that you're actually willing and able to do. Because when you have a plan where you're willing and able, then you can actually do something constructive in your circumstance where you might have been feeling stuck or doubtful or uncertain, and this will give you the courage and the confidence to make a move forward. So again, if you got something going on, give me a call. This is a good time to do it. Well, all right. I don't think I'm going to get a call, or at least I haven't got a call. Now, maybe again, you want to call in. If you're struggling, I'll give the number one more time: 475 222 5438. And the PIN is 114053 876 and the pound sign. Okay, so there is another topic that I'll address while I'm here talking to you today, and that is this idea of kind of moving forward emotionally through life and trying to be the best version of yourself. I know that's something I like to come back to and talk about a lot. Sometimes when I look back over my life, I wish I'd known some of the things I know now. I wish I wasn't sarcastic at times when I was, or I didn't tease as much as I did, or there's a number of things that I did I thought were funny that maybe were funny at somebody's expense. I mean, I generally was a good person and I did a lot of good things in my life. But when I look back, there were places where I could have been better. I'm sure of it. And even today, even with all that I know, sometimes I make mistakes. We all do. And I don't these days feel like I have to beat myself up if I make a mistake. What I try to do is understand, okay, when you do make a mistake, especially with somebody you care about, but really with anybody, because, one of the things I found in life is if I'm feeling uncomfortable and, like I said, I've had some physical pain recently that I'm dealing with. And I'm talking with somebody. I was very frustrated about a circumstance with something to do with my smartphone. I won't go into the details. I don't know that it's anybody's fault, but in any case, there was some concern that I had about trying to fix something in an account that I have online, and I couldn't get it fixed. And I called all these people in this company, and none of them could figure it out. It's still not fixed, but I have a case study, and they know I try to fix it. So I think that's going to be as good as it gets. But at times I'd find myself just, why can't anybody be helpful and know how to fix this? This was something to do with technology, and it's a technology company, and how could they not have something as simple as what I needed from them? Again, I don't want to go into names and start describing this in any kind of detail, other than to say is I find sometimes when I'm upset about something else that the person on the other end of the phone becomes a target, because I want to let my anger out somewhere. And this feels like a risk-free kind of like circumstance where I could just blow up at this person that I don't know on the other end of the phone because I'm feeling so uncomfortable and they can't get it right, even though they're trying. And I have found over the years, I am so much better about that than I ever used to be. Sometimes I just, say whatever was hurting inside of me would pour out of me. And it would be directed against somebody I didn't even know, but was frustrating me on the other end of a phone line. And I thought, that's wrong. I want to be better than that. And so sometimes I can tell people, like, I remember this person I was talking to today said, we're at the end of our phone call, there's going to be a survey. I appreciate it if you fill it out. I said, I'm not sure you want me to fill it out. You didn't fix anything. I said, what I can say is you're very nice and you tried very hard. And it really wasn't about you. But I really, really am unhappy with your company at the moment. So I can't give the call a high rating. I'm sorry. I don't think you want me to rate it. But I can do it like that without being nasty about it and without being, just crazed. And sometimes, again, I like to say I'm better at these things, and normally I am, but not all the time. Sometimes you just got so many things going on in your life that it feels like, you're drowning. You feel so overwhelmed. There's things happening with other family members. There's things happening in your workplace. There's things happening in your neighborhood. There's things happening in your country. There's things happening everywhere where you exist in all aspects of your life. And you're drowning, it feels like at times. But I think the Emotion Roadmap is a life preserver. It's a way to keep yourself afloat no matter what's going on. It's a way to say, okay, I know how I'm feeling, even why I'm feeling this way, and it makes sense to feel this way, but it's not helpful in this moment. I need to feel more resilient. I need to feel more impactful. I need to feel more in control. I need to find some positive energy so I can feel something pleasant about what's going on with me. So, as I'm getting to the close of my show, let me tell you about Forest, Forest. I have a Massachusetts accent. I grew up in Massachusetts, and sometimes people don't understand certain words. So I want to be clear. I'm talking about walking amongst the trees. For those of you who have spent any time recently maybe read the book Overstory, which is this amazing book about how trees communicate with each other, and it's a made up story. It's fictional, but it's based on a lot of science. And in today's world, based on the way I understand that trees now communicate with one another, you may not know this, but trees sometimes can warn each other when there's a horde of insects that are attacking a certain kind of tree, and other trees are somehow alerted ahead of time before the insects hit them, and they can somehow try to generate a more powerful immune system. Sometimes trees will find that there's certain trees that are dying because of thirst, because there's not enough water to go around, and you're dealing with just a very little rainfall as the forest may have experienced in recent times, and then some trees will allow other trees to have the water they need to survive and give up some of the water they'd like for themselves. It's not a surprise to me to find that there's ways that all kinds of living things communicate with one another. And at some point, I think through quantum computing and artificial intelligence and whatever else is going to be on the horizon that's going to be amazingly important and innovative, we're going to find ways to communicate with everything, I think, at some point. But for me now, I understanding that trees are sort of like communicating with one another. When I walk through the forest, I feel like I'm walking through a neighborhood. I see it differently now. I think of it as a neighborhood, and I'm very respectful of it. But one of the things I wanted to mention is kind of a thing that some people find extremely beneficial for managing how you feel is walking through the woods, but not even walking. Sometimes just sitting by a tree or on a stump or just somewhere and looking around you at all the fauna and all the different kinds of trees and the foliage and listening to the animal sounds and the birds sounds. And I actually, one of the things I really love is something called the Merlin app, Merlin, like the magician Merlin. And it comes from Cornell University. And you can, if you have a smartphone, you can just turn it on when you're listening to birds, and it will identify the birds that are around you by their songs. Kind of fun for me. And also, if you like knowing what the flowers are that you're looking at or the vegetation, if you have that Google search bar on your phone, you can use the little camera that has in the Google Lens, and if you just press on that, it'll take a picture of the vegetation you're looking at, and that'll tell you what you're looking at. I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but you certainly have a lot more knowledge than you would have without it. But forest bathing is a Japanese concept where people go into nature and they come out of that experience after sitting and listening to the sounds of nature or walking through the forest or just simply, and again, the English interpretation is forest bathing. It's bathing in the sounds and the experiences and the feelings brought up by the forest. I was teaching a course one time at the University of Hartford, and I was telling people about, because I mean, long before I ever heard of the concept of forest bathing, I always found myself uplifted when I would take a walk in the woods. I just feel like that's a connection to nature that just takes me out of my own head and out of my own worries or concerns and just puts me in a spot where to be in the present moment feels great when I'm in the forest. Now, that's as long as there's not a beer coming alongside me these days. But for the most part, being in the forest is just a great, wonderful feeling. And I was teaching that in a class at the University of Hartford. They had an organization behavior class where I was teaching about emotional intelligence in organizations. And there was a person who grew up in Bridgeport that was taking the class, and she said, I've lived in the city all my life, and to me, the woods are terrifying. So that might work well for you, Professor Wolf, I don't think that's something I'm going to try anytime too soon. So it's not for everybody, but if you have any kind of sense of communing with nature, it's a wonderful thing to do. And by the way, you don't have to really go in the woods. I think there are wonderful parks. Elizabeth Rose Garden is I think the oldest rose garden in the country in West Hartford. It's an amazing place to go walk around. It's very safe there, at least from animals. Maybe not from people, but it's very safe from animals. And it just feels great to see all the flowers. So that's another thing to do is just finding ways to be in nature the way it works for you without me saying this is what you should or shouldn't do. That's just another way to manage emotionally, how to generate creative, positive, pleasant feelings in yourself. So I'll close with that and say I hope to talk with you soon. Again, another Tuesday at 5 o'clock. This is Chuck Wolf. You've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in, and look forward to you talking with you next time. Bye-bye.
For over 40 years, SCM
has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education,
and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us
in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.